All right, all right. Good evening, everybody. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes for everybody to log in. Hello, hello, everybody. Be sure to drop me a comment so I can see you and most definitely speak. Let's make sure, turn my volume up a little bit. Okay. We should be good. We should be good. Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Hopefully you guys were able to see the invite. And I see we have some people coming in. I've been trying to do a lot better about posting those. Hello, Miss Jackson. How are you? To give you a heads up, I keep telling you guys Tuesday and Friday is my day, but y'all will not let me get on schedule. Hello, Miss, is it Lancaster or Lancaster? Because you just say Miss Lancaster. Well, we see how that goes. All right, see Miss Maria. We got a couple of people coming in, and people will float in as they do. But guys, we're going to start on time because this is one of those questions that comes up pretty often. And I got hit with it real hard yesterday evening. Even this morning, I've had some back and forth, and we're going to put it out there. And I want your honest opinion, and I'm going to give mine. And we may agree, we may not agree, but I need you guys to give me a little education, especially my people who are out there doing their soy wax kind of thing. So, if you haven't seen it, or you probably didn't notice, the title of this series, this episode, has to deal with hot throw. So let's talk about hot throw. Let's talk about, honestly, we're going to get down to paraffin wax, soy wax, parasoy, and all those other blends that you will hear about and see. All right. I'm going to give you my perspective from two areas. One is going to be from a candle maker. As I've told you guys before, I use a parasoy blend. So 70% paraffin, 30% soy. The reason that I've selected that type of blend is because, number one, I have never, and I do not use the term never lightly. Guys, I teach science. It's two words that we are very careful with, never and always. I have yet, let me put it like that. I have yet to burn a 100% soy candle that had the same hot throw as a paraffin candle, even as a parasoy candle. And I know a lot of you guys have purchased candle kits, and one of the first waxes that many people will offer you is going to be either golden wax 464, or some people will do, there's a nature's wax that is 100% soy. And the comments that I've seen over and over again, I am getting a good melt. I even have a wick that seems to be the correct size. It is nicely burning. I have my melt pool. I'm walking away during testing. And 2, 3, 4 hours later, when you return to the room, you are not getting the hot throw you were looking for. I would love to know how many of you guys started your journey with soy. A lot of people start their journey with soy wax. And I've had a couple of people who have wanted to give up because of soy wax. And I've told them all the same thing. There are different types of wax for a reason. If you came into candle making because you loved your Bath and Body Works candle, you loved your White Barn candle, you loved your Yankee candle. Let me tell you something about Bath and Body Works and Yankee Candle. Those are parasoy candles. Y'all know that, right? Actually, the majority of Bath and Body Works candles, especially when they are doing really well, they're paraffin for the most part. Some of their fragrances actually have a 60-40 blend. Most of them are 70-30, where it is 70% paraffin and 30% soy. The majority of your large candle makers, even if you look on the website for White Barn, it will tell you that they pour 100% soy candles. Look a little bit deeper. The deeper you dig, you will notice once you make it down to those MSDS sheets, once we start getting to those storage instructions, that their candles actually are 100% soy, but they also have proprietary additives added. As you read down the list, the further down the list you go, guess what ingredient you're going to find? Paraffin. There is a reason that we have this huge conundrum. Most of us start out at least pouring soy. It's the number one wax that we're going to be recommended. I started with my first 1 pound. I was so glad it was one. Went back and got a 10-pound bag of my little flakes, and I was on the soy kick. And then I walk into the candle supply. I use Southwest Candle Supply that's located in Mesquite, Texas. The lady looks at me and I'm like, look, I can pour a candle. My top is smooth. I have trimmed the wick. I'm watching the flame. It is a great flame size. And then I got quiet because I was frustrated, confused. And she looked at me and she said, sweet, let me give you a recommendation. Don't start with soy. For most of us, soy is too temperamental. It's something that you end up mastering with time. And at the end of the day, for those people who have been in business for a while, if you are a 100% soy wax user, and it is the only thing that you use for your entire line, the other thing that they're going to tell you is their client is different than the average client. I have clients that come to my booth all the time at my retail location. And the number one question they're going to ask is, well, what type of candle is this? Usually you can look. If it is holding its color, the reason people use paraffin is because I don't have to be really, really exact when it comes to my fragrance oil load. I can use color, even if I make a mistake and it goes a little bit darker than I want to. 80 to 90% of the time, you are still going to get a good burn and you will still get a good hot throw. Now, where did the big debate between soy and paraffin come from? Guys within any industry, if you look at McDonald's and Burger King, they're going to argue with each other. They're going to tell you whose burger is best and try to get your business. Candle companies are the exact same way. Some of us are going into this thinking that every candle company, every candle that makes wax is our friend, and they are in business. I don't have to necessarily mislead you, but I can always make information appear the way that I would like. And at the end of the day, I hate to say the phrase, if you research it, you will find it. And it's not very hard to find. Now, here are a couple of things that you will hear, and I want to know how you guys respond to this. Some of us use soy instead of paraffin because we've been told it will reduce the amount of soot that's created. I would love to tell you that soy candles do not produce soot, but the science teacher in me has to be honest. It does. The only difference is paraffin, of course, is a byproduct or waste product from the crude process. So crude oil process is where you are getting this leftover wax or what is turned into paraffin wax. But keep in mind, what goes into your candle is actually food grade. It is the same paraffin wax that covers apples in the grocery store. It is the same paraffin that we use, honestly, in drywall, in every wall in your home, apartment, condo, townhome. There is a paraffin byproduct. We're going to use it because it's a preservative. We're going to use it because it seals really well. We're going to use it because it allows other products to hold their size, their shape, their color. It's just true. Do soy candles produce soot? The answer is yes. The only difference is the soot is lighter in color. It's white. It is a clear soot. Let me tell you how we figured this out. I teach AP biology, guys, and I've also taught physics. And in one of those labs, or in a couple of labs that we've done, we took a look at air quality. And the easiest way for me to gauge and show kids the differences that can be created by household products or things that we use commonly in the home, I chose to use candles because I had a hot plate, I had some wicks, I had access to it. Their job was to vacuum seal that area, allow a controlled amount of air to flow, and they were going to suck off and analyze what was in the air after it had burned. Keep in mind, soy wax comes from soybeans. We love our little soybeans. Whole nother story on that one. But we're going to separate this oil, and at the end of the day, I'm going to ask you this. How many of you guys that use 100% soy? How many of you guys add an additive to make it harder? How many of us have heard of V-Bar? How many of us are adding in beeswax? How many of you are adding in coconut oil? All to increase the hot throw. I know that you are convinced that this all-natural approach is exactly what you need. There are even people that add essential oils to their candle. And at the end of the day, most of you guys have to go back and add an additive. Because even though you're getting the burn and the melt pool, you are not getting the hot throw you are looking for. I have heard the myth, and it is a myth, that all soy waxes must cure at least somewhere between 7 to 14 days. I'm going to tell you that there are a couple of brands out there. It is on the box. It is on the wrapping. It is with the manufacturer. That's not necessarily true. There are some soy waxes that will cure in 3 days. For some of you guys, that's important because you have a limited amount of space before that product needs to go out the door to be accessible to any of your customers. So the biggest thing is finding a company that creates that product that fits your needs. You have also been told that maybe if soy isn't working for you, we're going to go in and we're going to add in, 3% coconut oil, 7%, 10% coconut oil. If we're looking at 3%, if you're looking at that smaller percentage, what they're telling you is for every 1 pound of wax, you can go in and add roughly about 1 tablespoon of coconut oil. And what that coconut oil or beeswax is going to do is interact with your soy and allow it to create stronger bonds with your fragrance oil. Well, if you're using the same fragrance oil as everyone else, 90% of fragrance oils are synthetic. So you have a natural wax with a synthetic fragrance oil. Many of us are not using sustainable wicks. So it depends on what you're using. And some of us are going back and forth. If you're using a CD wick with soy, CD wicks are some of the hottest burning wicks there are. The reason that you have to step up in size for soy wax, it's going to take a higher temperature in order to help create the melt pool that you're looking for. I am not anti-soy. I use soy in different products based on the customer that I'm serving. I use soy because sometimes it is the creaminess or the lightness that a client is looking for, and soy will give me the best option instead of going back and trying to figure out exactly how much should I dial back my paraffin wax. So instead, I pour soy. It's the only thing that I change about it. Now, the other thing I want you guys to pay attention to, there is a wax shortage. If you have not seen it, if you have not noticed it at your local distributor, I most definitely have. Even at Southwest Candle, I also have AAA Candle. Lone Star Candle is not very far from me. But you're noticing that certain waxes are harder and harder to find. If you are a coconut blend kind of person, you got to be careful because you don't want to buy too much wax at a time. I was going through, and y'all know I had to break down and take a couple of little notes. There are some soy blends. There are some wax blends in general that don't recommend bulk storage more than 3 to 4 weeks, depending on where you're putting that wax. So instead of rushing out to buy cases and cases because you have that fear of running out, what ends up happening is the more your wax is exposed to oxygen, the more air hits it, the more you start to play with the integrity of that wax. It wasn't meant for that. It was meant to be heated, fragranced, sealed, and put away. That's not counting if I create a candle that doesn't have a top, because many people will put on a dust cover, and that's fine. But if you are having that natural wax constantly exposed to oxygen, I want you to be very mindful. For those of us that are in the South, Southwest even, we're getting to the part of the year where one morning it is extremely cool. The next morning it is humid. You want to keep your workspace as evenly temp as possible. You want to keep your humidity to a minimum as well. Think of trying to create a product with consistency. And that's going to be the number one thing that you guys are looking for. There are several of you who have also asked about adding color. So when you're pouring a soy candle, if you're using Golden Wax 464, you're able to get the top and the coloring on the side as you like. But what you're noticing whenever you go from just a plain white candle to add in color, it is starting to impact your flame, which will also impact your melt pool. And remember, 90%, 100% of that fragrance, once it's lit, is coming from the melt pool itself. Now, what you will see, because I've seen several people try to dye black candles, for example, anything that is black, blue, purple, or dark green, you're going to have to load that wax with quite a bit of dye to achieve that color. Guys, if you are not testing already, once you have added a few drops of dye, because I usually use liquid dye. I started out with dye chips, but in order to be consistent with dye chips, you have to measure how much of the chip you're actually cutting off. Yeah, I got away from that one quick. I started doing my drops. I wrote down how many drops per color, and I was good. So if you were looking for a consistent color, you may want to find a good candle dye. Candle dye and food color dye are not the same. If I want to test how this candle will look after it is actually cured, take a little bit of your wax and drip it on a paper towel. That's going to dry really quickly, and it's going to show you what that color will look like. Just because it is nice, dark, and rich inside of that pouring pot, I guarantee you it's going to be extremely light and faint if you do not go beyond the color that's in the pouring pot. So keep that in mind. Here's another one. If you were to the point that you would like to use soy beyond just a container, because if you look at your packaging, most companies will tell you that 100% soy is a container-only wax. And if you're trying to use it for wax melts, you'll notice the softness of it. So I've had a lot of people, no matter how long they're allowing it to sit, it remains soft. Guys, that's one of the qualities of soy wax that's appreciated by a lot of people. That's where your V-bar, your additives, your beeswax, and all those other hardeners, because you can buy a food-grade hardener to add to your soy so that you're able to use it in wax melts. But keep in mind, at the end of the day, it is considered to be a container-only wax. Now, on the other end, even though soy candles have a higher melting temperature that's required, so they should ship a little bit better, I will tell you over time, even without adding the UV additive, because they do make UV additives, if your candle is going to sit close to a light source or a window, you're going to have to add something to it to help it maintain that color. If not, you're going to notice that creamy white color that so many of us love, it begins to tinge after a while. If I'm doing soy candles and I'm looking over at my shelf now, if I'm pouring buttercream, leather, French vanilla, those are extremely dark fragrance oils. So you're going to notice they're not as light. And I can show you an example. So, for example, this is Birds of Paradise. Birds of Paradise is one of those fragrances that is nice, light, and it lingers extremely well. So if you're the kind of person that you tend to sit close to a candle when it's burning, or you want to just catch a nice whiff of something as you're walking from room to room, Birds of Paradise is a really good contender. But I want you to compare the color of this one to the color of this one. This is going to be the Tom Ford Tobacco Vanilla type. All right. Tobacco Vanilla, just like buttercream, leather, French vanilla, and so many others, is extremely heavier bodied when we compare the two. Here's another one. If I am comparing all three, does everybody see the difference in those three? So if you want to maintain a white wax, you have to be very familiar with what you are adding in, what's going to create that creaminess. Now, some people, it's been recommended that you use a little snow-capped mica powder. Be careful. Mica and wicks do not mix very well. All right. There are some people that will use mica and they will switch over to a wood wick. I will tell you from experience, I have clogged wood wicks. I have clogged paper wicks or paper cotton wicks as well. So mica powder is something that I only reserve to give that shimmer or shine to my wax melt. And that is going to be the end of that one. Now, the other thing is, if you hear people say that soy wax is created in an all-natural process, paraffin wax is created in an industrial situation, soy wax is hydrogenated. It is still processed. It is still going to go through that process because you need to compress that wax. So even as the soybean itself and the oils are separated, you have to go in for hydrogenation and change the bond structure to ensure you can create a product that holds together for its purpose. Soy wax is easier because it is in flake form compared to most paraffins that will come in slabs. So depending on your reasoning, depending on the type of client, depending on your brand, that's going to be one of the things that determines what type of wax you end up sticking to. Do most candle makers only use one wax? Absolutely not, y'all. No, I use a different wax based on the situation, based on what I need. I allow my need to dictate what I have access to. For example, if you do palm wax, so palm feather wax, you've seen those pillar candles. They use it in votives or molds, especially the molds that are real popular with the little, y'all know, little naked bust lady and the little guy doing their things. Pillar wax is extremely hard. It is great when you use it for a tart because your tart will hold its shape. I have a teddy bear mold that I like to use for excess wax. And one of the things I will pour in there will be pillar wax. But you've got to be mindful to let your customers know. If they're using a warmer that uses a tea light for its light source, 9 times out of 10, that's not enough to fully melt your palm feather wax. Palm feather wax is pulled from the palm tree. It's a palm plant. So it's the it's the top shoot and root system of it that is compressed to make that. It is all natural. It's something that is pulled from a natural source. But again, it goes through a process. And that process is what you want to pay attention to. The other thing you want to keep in mind, the more exotic your wax becomes, the more exotic the price becomes. If I am just starting out, probably the 2 waxes you want to start with would be 464, which is your soy, and then a paraffin or a para-soy blend. And try to select one that is heavier on the paraffin side than the soy. Go ahead and pour those at the same time. Test them with 2 different fragrances. If you allow them to burn, leave the room and come back, you will be able to figure out pretty quickly which one you're able to smell. Start with the wax that you are most comfortable with, not the one that everybody else is recommending to you. There are a few of you guys, the other question that I've gotten is, what do I do if I have a perfect melt pool, I have good glass adhesion, but my flame is a little too high? Keep in mind your first burn, your flame is going to be higher than it should be at any other time, especially if you are clipping your wick. But I'm going to also encourage you guys to wick down because that flame height is really important. What it's telling you is the amount of fragrance oil that is coming off of your wax that's been absorbed by the wick and being exposed to the air is a little bit too much. I also want you to always assume that your customer, your client, will not cut a wick. In my mind, most of my clients are going to allow that candle to burn until they walk by and think of it. After it cools, maybe a day or 2 later, they're going to walk up, grab the jar, pinch off whatever part of the wick they can with their hand and relight. That's it. All right. So you want to protect yourself, protect your brand, protect your business by being as safe as you can. Has anybody had a good testing week? A really good testing week? Or has anyone created a product or a candle system that they're proud of? Like your routine is finally starting to work for you. When it comes to figuring out what you're going to do long term, remember, the most important person who needs to be comfortable with the process is the candle maker themselves. And that's you. Any questions for me, guys? I just had to get that out on hot throw and cold throw. And I see we have a couple of people who just switched to 6006. Is 6006 a para-soy blend? I believe it is. Because I know sometimes your numbers are a little bit different. And the other question I want to ask, do we have anybody that pours with 100% beeswax? Because I have found a couple of beeswax people, and it's definitely another question I've had. No. All right. Well, you guys, I want you to focus on what is going to be most important to you. Make sure your wick is center, which is another one that we've been running into. If you are not using either a wick centering part or I eyeball when I insert my wicks. I prefer to use hot glue over wick stickers. I've noticed a lot of people have been struggling with the wick stickers as well. Hot glue is another option. Glue dots can also be used. They come in packs of 200 to 400 for a couple of bucks, but they will definitely hold that wick in place and hold it steady. All right. Oh, here's another one. Last but not least, I had a young lady that was interested in creating or had been convinced to use crayons as a source of wax for her candles. Okay. Okay, hold up. Y'all, now, most of us remember crayons. Some of us still color as adults. You know, it is stress relieving. It's a nice little thing. Please do not go out and buy packages and packages of crayons to create multicolored candles. I don't recommend it. Number one, your wick doesn't burn. All right. My other issue is these candles had actually been sold to a few people and had never been tested. Once it was finally tested, it was found that not only does the wax not give off fragrance, but once again, the wick doesn't burn. Crayons are made of wax, but they are also made of other food grade items. And so I want you to keep that in mind. At the end of the day, if you are purchasing your fragrance oil from Amazon, stop. Don't do that. Amazon is expensive when it comes to fragrance oil. Pound for pound, ounce by ounce, however you want to look at it. If you want a tester, please find your distributor. 1, 2, 4, or hey, 16 ounces is fine. But the continuous ordering of different materials, especially when it comes to jars, y'all, Amazon is not the business for jars. If you are doing a regular straight-sided jar, if you are still doing just regular salsa, jelly jars, any of those, mason jars, Amazon is not your friend. And I am an Amazon Prime member. I see my Amazon dude every other day probably. But there are some things you want to do a little bit more research. Here's another one that nobody threw out. What are you doing about shipping? Has anybody noticed the change in shipping cost? Because it gets up there pretty quickly. For example, I use a standard white box, ordered from Amazon, once again. And when I'm looking at it, I'm able to put 2 8-ounce candles in each box. That's with all the fanciness, business card, whatever little free gift or surprise is included. That shipping box has actually gone from $7 to ship to $9 to ship. So the last time I shipped it, it was $12.50. Shipping costs are also changing. So as you're creating your product, as you're working out your price list and trying to figure out where to put your product, I want to encourage you guys to really, really work hard to include some of that shipping cost in each product that you create. Even the ones that you drop off or people pick up. Because the shipping cost can definitely be a turn off for so many people. If you are thinking about an Etsy shop, you're thinking about doing Shopify, one of the biggest ways they like to attract people is to offer free shipping. Guys, free shipping will kill a small business if you have not worked that fee into your cost. So that's going to be a big one as well. The coconut apricot wax. I got a bit of that because I was really wondering about it, Miss Jimenez. Some of us that started with 464 is really tempting to go to the coconut apricot. I will say, you can always tell the waxes that contain coconut because some of them have this little dry area where the coconut line is located. I like the creaminess and the smoothness that coconut apricot has given me. What I'm working on now is really achieving the level of hot throw that I want because my goal is not to add so many additional additives to my wax. If it gets to the point where I feel like I'm adding too additives to a wax, I try to switch out and see what else could I do. Because keep in mind, if you're making a product and you have to add additives, what happens when you don't have access to that additive? And I've run into that. What happens when I can't seem to find my favorite jar anywhere? I've had that happen. What happens when my wicks are no longer available? Because for some of us, a shortage of wicks has been a huge one. So you want to be proactive, not in buying, but in having other avenues that you can definitely go to keep your brand and your product line going. When you guys are switching from one wax type to the other, here's another question. What are you doing with the leftover wax that you are no longer using? Yeah, I asked that question. Y'all know. Y'all know Kelly is cheap. Yes, I am. Coconut oil and beeswax are recommended for hot throw. So adding in that tablespoon should help with your hot throw, definitely. I've used V-Bar. V-Bar is also regarded as not only a slight hardener for the wax, but it is also for certain waxes that can increase your hot throw as well. A lot of people haven't considered additives when you pour anything, as far as like some people touch the top of their candle and like to see does it leave fingerprints really easily, or they may pour a wax melt and they don't like the softness. So that's kind of where some of your additives will come in. The coconut oil, if you're using 464, should help with your hot throw. Again, I'm going to recommend try adding a little bit to 1 pound. 1 pound of wax will normally pour somewhere between 6 or 7 clamshells full, depending on how you fill it up. I usually fill mine as far as it can go. After it's cured, try placing it in your bathroom. Put it in a smaller area and see, can you tell the difference between the hot throw? A lot of us are still testing either by lighting in our kitchen or our living room. Think about the size of the room that you're in. So if I can find a smaller, more constrained area, I get a really quick idea of what it's doing and what it's not doing. Oh, I'm trying to think, because there's something else that came to my mind about it. Oh, no, I didn't finish, y'all. Y'all know I get off task, y'all. Come on. And the throat is dry. It's my Friday, y'all. We out of school tomorrow, so I'm excited. All right. The question was, what are you doing with your old wax if you switch to a new wax? Here's something. For example, my young lady who started with 464, and now she's switching over to the coconut apricot wax. I'm going to encourage you to mix those together. So if you find that you love that coconut apricot, do 70% of that, 30% of that 464. I don't know why I keep saying 4. It is 464. So 464, and see if you like what you get. To be honest, that's how a lot of brands end up coming up with their luxury candle. That's actually how I came up with my luxury brand that I'm working on. It's taking waxes that I wasn't a fan of by themselves and kind of mixing them with what I love the most. So do not throw that wax away. You can always mix it and do a little bit of something with it. If all else fails, create you tarts. And remember, you can always do samples. But I would definitely try pouring a 4-ounce or 8-ounce candle or two with different fragrance oils to really see if I like it. You may find your special blend. And there's nothing like having your own proprietary blend. People will definitely notice when your candle smells a little bit different or looks a little bit different from everyone else's. Remember, most of your wicks are about 6 to 7 inches. Most of us are going to have somewhere between 3 to 5 inches of wick left over after we have gone down the line to cut. Do not throw that piece of wick away. So you can buy that metal base and add your glue, add your wick sticker, and use the rest of that wick as well. You want to be very, very cost effective. Last but not least, I want you guys to be very mindful. I have seen 10 pounds, a 10-pound slab or a 10-pound bag of wax range anywhere from $18 to a 10-pound bag or slab ranging up to $32. Y'all, $32 for a 10-pound slab is a lot. If you are not calculating that in, it's going to make it really difficult for you. You don't want to lose money on the back end. So definitely keep all of that in mind. Any other questions? Has everyone selected at least 1 to 2 scents that are preparing for the summer season. Either we're going to take one of our favorite ones and perhaps rename it. We're currently mixing some fragrance oils. If you have some fragrance oil that you bought because it read really well, the description was lovely, try the same thing with those too. Mix them. Mix them and kind of see. Start with a 50-50 mix. And honestly, for some reason, that 70-30 split usually hits the nose pretty well. So it's something else you may want to think of. All right, guys. I will see you guys hopefully on Tuesday. Remember, if you have a question for me, don't hesitate. Most of you guys have friended me on my personal page. Some of you have found me under BCJ Decor. There is a separate page for that as well. I post a little content there as well as on YouTube. So check the description. Let me know if you have a question. Don't hesitate to ask, and I will see you later.